Essentially, okay, I think I chose a topic, has big data delivered its ROI promise. How many of this in this room actually work in the enterprise software area? So how many of, I think basically I'm trying to pose some question out there, say that because I'm coming from an area what we call, I work for an enterprise software company which has got a probably 40, 50-year-old history, and then we work on multiple systems that practically carry all of the history of the software industry put together, I would say that. So in that context, I'm asking is basically, how many of you actually in the enterprise software system have done some POCs in big data area or machine learning or whatever it is? I see very few hands, right? Or of these, how many actually went and, in fact, why I'm trying to do this question is more than because basically to say that, I want to share our experiences and how we went about building a big data science practice and how we can go ahead and, what are the key lessons that we learned while doing this 4 to 5 years of, since we started the practice 5 years back, and how do we get it, okay? So, I presume that, I think in the enterprise software, I have seen very few guys who have basically got it from a POC to, to get to production system, right? Can I take that as a statement, yes or no? Okay, fine. That in good looks like fun. So in that context, to put in the context actually, to understand what Broadridge is all about, if you look at the statement, basically it says that we are the most important stream in the Wall Street, but people don't hear much of it. What do you mean by that? Essentially, that means that we are a company that does most of the back-end transaction processing for, good part of the, I would say that good part of the Fortune 500 companies or the listed companies. That is one aspect of it. And we are the service provider for all big financial institutions. That is one. And secondly, I think all of you know about something called investor communication services, where, companies try to communicate with shareholders. So in that space, we got approximately 80 plus, I would say that, market share. That means that most of the proxy communication that happens in the US markets goes through our systems. Coming to that now. So essentially what I want to say is, as a Broadridge as a company, data is a core asset to Broadridge. Why? Because I'll give a simple example or basically say bring it out why data is a core asset for us. See, essentially we process around 5 trillion notional value of securities, value and securities of fixed income and equity securities day in and day out. That is one aspect of it. That means what? And this gives approximately a market share of 60% in the whole of United States. So with that 60% market share on the transaction part of it, good part of transactions pipe through our systems. That is one aspect. And secondly, in the investor communication service, every year we basically send probably more than 2 billion investor communications. That one more thing it shows that the centerpiece of all these three organizations is what I would call corporate issuers, voters, and mutual funds. Putting all this together, as a company, we have got probably 130 million investor accounts. We know how they behave, who they vote for, what is there. We have got the complete data in that. That basically puts that, and overall a data perspective, approximately we got around 200 petabytes of data spread over 30-year history. So this is the kind of level of data that we manage day in and day out. But I think this basically I want to just show that the kind of we have invested in more in the context of being highly transaction processing, where like for example for us we have got a strict SLA agreements which basically ensures that we have got to get our batches by the time the market is up next day morning. We need to get our systems up and ready. For that we used Greenplum at the same time to give real-time dashboard to the advisors who run to millions of accounts. We use what we call Gemfire to do the transaction processing. That is one aspect of it. And then to make all these things on a technology perspective, we have used the Graminar for using visualization, and then most of the technology with this. Okay. Now, I think at this point of time, I would want to break and share the key 5 approaches that we saw that essentially want to say that, see, like, if we look at it over a 40 period history, as a company, we have got multiple systems passing through. So what happens is every business unit, when they work on it, they have got their own data, they have got their own systems, and this data gets stored in their systems. This basically causes what happens is when we want to get any big data solution in the context of this particular solution, typically business units want to basically work within them. Like simple example I can give is, we work in international markets, we work in North American car markets, and we have got a different solution for each one of them, and each one is runs as a business unit by itself. So that results in what? Everyone who wants to apply any data science, any application, or they want to build any insights, anything they want, they would go what? Internally, they know what their data is, they want to ensure that it is within them. That basically creates what? There is no cross charge of the data that flows across these systems. That fundamentally creates a situation where your solutions are really localized, they cannot be scaled, they cannot give the insights that really would want it, and you are not leveraging your whole data assets. That is where we say, that is what I say that, when you want to write multiple systems, the best way for us to start is have a single data approach that helps us in, given that, that basically gives us a single data approach that helps us to bring solutions that can use the data that comes across multiple systems. How we are getting that? I'll give a simple example out here. Like for example, as I told you, we have got around 130 million investors out sitting there and data available to us. If we segregate them by geography, segregate them by assets, segregate them by this one, and feed it to the advisors who are basically can cross-sell who is interested in what, that helps us in reusing the data that is in the transaction systems to go to the actually recommendation system. That's how what I would say is in a single data approach is the one that helps us to go ahead and not in where analytics cannot be in silos. If you go to the next step, then while doing this, essentially the challenge is what, when you're getting data from multiple systems and multiple ways, what happens is there's semantics, there is a context and the meaning to each one of these data elements, right? That fundamentally what happens is when you try to put together, to put them and merge in a single system is the biggest challenge out there. You don't have a place where you could simply go back and say what it means and how you can merge two different things. That is where we got the concept of basic, you create a data library. Data library, what it means is merge together all these systems, give a semantics to that, to the data that is there, or to the schema itself that helps you to understand the same information. For example, a trade in a fixed income product may be in one column name, or a similar column name could be something else in a equity. With these two things out there, how do you make sure that is where we use what I call semantics, use the mark logic we deployed, which basically helps us to put all these things together and give context to the data that we have. That's where we have invested a lot of time and money in building up the semantic library that can help us to understand the whole data that is there across all our systems. The third identifies essentially, as I told you, we're coming from enterprise class, right? In the enterprise class solutions, what I would say is that if pure tech play companies, what they do, they are more interested in the algorithms or the knowledge extraction behind it. But that doesn't help in a situation where where the data that is unique to our company, we are missing that point out there. Essentially, so what we need to think of is in terms of what is the unique data that our organization has got, and how that can be leveraged with the rest of the data. That helps us to repurpose the whole data source and explore the network value by which we could build a big solutions, which basically gives us return on investment that we are looking for. This is a concept that we came with, what we call micro-decisioning. If I put it in that way, this is something that we've been using in the past 5 years to help us to build the solutions. Simple example I can give you. What we have done is, simple example is, we try to all the meeting data, all the proxy data for all the companies sitting there, and I call a data scientist and say, give me some insights out of it. He comes back and says that, simple example, he comes back and says, all the meetings in United States, annual meetings are held in the months of March and April. That's a simple insight that you could come back and say. But if I take the business user, it is of no use for him. The reason being that he knows that, that is something that is well known out of there. So that is where the involvement of the rest of the team, what I would call the business users, come to the real critical picture, becomes a critical need for running out this. So I would typically call micro-decisioning as what I would call a sense of running the development process in agile mode. But at the same time, we need to be watchful that, like for example, you bring a subject matter expert, because he knows a master, he thinks that he knows everything. We want to essentially don't get biased by what he's saying versus independent thought. That is where, and then the second aspect that I would really want to bring out is what, whenever we do any data science project, any big data, essentially what people are looking for is what I call second or third order insights, which can help us to identify, unlock the real value of the data that is sitting there. That is critical. To get there, it requires a teamwork, and then we need to see that. That's where we saw at each point of the step of the process, you need to involve the business users so that we can get the right set of inputs that we can use to solve the problem at hand. The last thing that I would say is like, big data practice is not something that you could do as a single person or a single one. It requires I would say, multi-dimensional approach. What I mean a multi-dimensional approach is, first is you must have SMEs who understand your data, who are able to give you the business expertise. The second aspect I would say is what, the technology that is driven it, and the third is the underlying statistics or the algorithms are part of whatever it is. Putting together all these things, this is how we have built our ecosystem, essentially what I call, we have got a domain expertise, technology, modeling analytics, and data insights visualization. All this put together, we have been able to build a center of excellence that is able to handle across all the businesses or the organizations. That's all I've done. Any questions out there?